pop up again and again. The director of the sequence we worked on Heavy Metal was a guy named John Bruno. 15 years later, I'm watching a documentary about the making of, or more than that, many years later, the documentary making of Titanic. And there's James Cameron in this Russian submarine going down to look at the Titanic, and the guy next to him is John Bruno. I'm like, that's the guy I worked with on the Heavy Metal movie in Montreal. And a month ago I was in Germany doing a big conference called FMX, and there's John Bruno. I'm like, John, he's like, Joe? And it's, this is like 30 years later or something like that, and he's James Cameron's right-hand man working on Avatar. And like, how bloody cool is that? And what did you do with your career? Well, I was the head of effects at Walt Disney feature animation. So it's kind of like, isn't that cool, And we both laughed about the fact that we get to do these incredible things just because we like animation. That's all, that's the common denominator. And it's our dreams are coming true, absolutely. So, my career path unfolded like I was doing a workshop a couple of days ago, and I was telling the students that after a certain point, which was around when I got a job with Don Bluth in Los Angeles, from that point on, I never even had a demo reel. I never even tried to get the next job. The next job was always just there waiting, and all they needed to hear from my last boss was hire this guy. And I just went from job to job. It was like it was actually almost effortless. But I say this I want to make a caveat that if you're getting into the animation industry, it's not effortless. And I don't want to say that I just waltzed through this happy life of going from studio to studio and everything was roses. There was a lot of adversity. There was a lot of dry years when there wasn't a lot of work. There was a lot of time when I had to dig in and just stick with it, right? But I never doubted. I just never doubted for a minute. And I think with the so-called recession that's happening now, a lot of people are like, where are the jobs? It's very cyclical in nature. And I just want to encourage everybody, especially the students who are, I want to have a life of animation. I want to create animation. It will come around. It will come around. If you stick with it, you will end up working on animation. And if you really stick with it, you'll end up working on animation that you actually like. You can't like every job you get. They won't all be the perfect job. But if you stick with it and you're ambitious and ridiculously idealistic, I don't know, it came true for me, and I think it can come true. I think there's something about animation that's like alchemy. It feeds on itself and it creates magic, and we're actually in the business of creating magic. In the end, all the paths and all the little side things that I went through, and the journeys and the traveling and the ups and downs, led me to working at Disney, which was secretly a dream. When I was in art school, it was very artsy-fartsy, and they were kind of anti-Disney. You don't want to sell out and work for Disney. And I was, I don't want to sell out and work for Disney. Secretly, I really wanted to go work for Disney. I was just trying to be a hip, cool, slick, groovy artist and say, oh yeah, I'm not into that. I wanted to work at Disney. And it's interesting because I always thought, when I get to Disney, I can't wait to work with those old guys that have been there forever, and they've worked on this stuff their whole lives, and they can tell me all these stories, and I can learn from them. And I finally got to Disney, and it turned out I was that old guy. I had been working in the industry longer than anybody else there, except with the exception of Barry Cook. He was the director of Mulan. He had been in the industry for about a year longer than me. So I was the guy they gathered around to. They were like, ooh, you worked on the Heavy Metal movie? Wow, tell us about it and everything. I was the old fart that they, that the animators, wanted to listen to my stories and everything. But how cool is that? again, here I am at Disney and I think I'm going to be coming in at the bottom or something. No, I actually got into Disney with quite a lot of experience already. And it wasn't long before I was, and again, I wasn't ambitious. This was difficult because there were people at Disney who were ambitious. There were people who had been in the special effects department for 20 years who wanted to run the special effects department. They were very ambitious. And they asked me if I wanted to run the special effects department, and I said, of course, you know, I guess so. And so I learned a little bit about politics and stuff because there were people who hated me because I had, you know, gotten the job that they so coveted just by being me. I didn't even try, you know, and it made them really angry. But it was all good. I actually became a very good diplomatic kind of, you know, I knew how to work with people and make them, and empower them, you know, and teach them and let them feel like they're doing their thing. So I'm actually going to awkwardly cut to some photos and slides, just for kicks. I don't have a slide presentation. I didn't think I was going to be able to plug in my laptop here and just fly. And initially I was thinking I'm just going to talk, but I'm just going to put a few images up on the screen here that reflect certain parts of my story, and hopefully you'll get a giggle out of one or two of them. Let's see if I can find... Yeah, so they're just shots from various... this one is really amusing. Now, I don't know if you recognize that guy. But that's actually me, and that's actually at the heavy metal movie Rap Party, and that's me playing with my band, the Heavy Metal Blues Band. So that's circa 1981, and I'm 23 years old, and I'm covered in sweat, and I'm the happiest kid in the world. I'm playing rock and roll at the Heavy Metal Rap Party. Now, of course, there was the heavy metal premiere of the movie down in New York, where they had Black Sabbath and Cheap Trick and everything, so I felt kind of little when I went to that. But this was cool. This was the private rap party for the artists who actually worked on the film, and you know, what a blast and what an absolute dream to have gotten to do that sort of thing. There I am again. I was incredibly skinny, and I actually looked like a girl. It's kind of interesting. But that was the 80s. Here's a really interesting one, meeting rich and famous people. Anyone recognize this guy?
Yeah, it's Eisner.
Yeah, Michael Eisner. So here I am at the Lilo and Stitch rap party with, you know, this guy who's on the cover of Fortune 500 all the time and everything. And I completely caught him off guard because I was with my girlfriend at the time, and I said, "There's Michael Eisner, get a picture, get a picture." And I just kind of ran up and said, "Michael, Michael." And he was, it just happened, and it unfolded, and it was a really, really wonderful moment. And that's definitely one of my favorite photographs of all times. He had no idea what hit him. And we never saw a guy that looked more uncomfortable in a Hawaiian shirt. I mean, that guy just, you know, he was wearing a Hawaiian shirt that day because he had to. I mean, he was a pretty stiff sort of a fella. But, you know, my humble beginnings in Montreal as a bohemian artist, I never really pictured myself, you know, doing that, you know. And I mean, living in Florida, I had a big 5-bedroom house and a swimming pool and a fishing boat and 3 motorcycles and, you know, all the material stuff, which I don't have anymore and I don't give a damn about, by the way. That's not success. The success was getting to work on films that I loved. And I can honestly say, and I love to say that like working on Lilo and Stitch was my favorite show. The directors were incredible. You know, I got to go to Hawaii and do stuff like this. That was my first trip to Hawaii, and I went out on a little fishing trip, and they said, well, there might be some tuna biting, but they're not really in yet. And I caught this thing. And that's just a result of making cartoons. That's how I got there, you know. And that thing was 164 pounds. I don't know, can you relate that to kilos? Stuff like this is Aaron Blaze, the guy on the left here, is the director of Brother Bear. And we had a band together, and we used to play all over Orlando at little coffee shops, kind of acoustic music and stuff like that. But again, I wasn't just working at Disney, I was making music with the directors and people that I looked up to and admired and everything. And I always felt like, I'm just this kid from Montreal that likes making cartoons. There was nothing more to it than that, really. And you know, I think this world of opportunity can open up for any of us. This is with Ryan Larkin, and this is about a year before he passed away. Again, another really magical event that happened was a guy named Chris Landreth made a film about Ryan's life. Actually, I missed that little part of my story when I started working on the heavy metal movie. They sent me to Ryan's house to work with him and to work in his home, one-on-one with Ryan Larkin. He was the guy, the inspiration.